Neither do I. No, I have one idea. All right. We are back live. Welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for November 15th, 2023. Back with my friend John Ulzheimer, formerly with Equifax and TransUnion. And we are back again, John. Do you know how many of these lives that have been done? Not, I
Uh,
don't know so much with you and
24.
me together, but just all together lives.
Oh, you mean the ones that we've done together or the ones y'all have done,
Both,
period?
both.
Have we done 24?
No, I think it's closer to 65 or 70.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
So
way off.
yeah, well, altogether we're almost at 170.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well,
170 lives
this
altogether.
is
Wow.
um, this is our inaugural hoodie episode. Um,
Yeah,
since
I'm sporting my smart credit, which by the
I've got
way, well, I can't see that because you got your what's it?
UAS. So
What's UAS?
This is the Uruguayan American School. This is the school that I went to when I lived in Montevideo, Uruguay. When my father was stationed at the U.S. Embassy in Uruguay, and this was second and third grade. This is the elementary school that I went to.
Clearly not the same hoodie.
No, it's a different hoodie. It's very
Because if you're the same size back then, that would be an adventure.
different.
All right.
Yeah,
So
definitely different hoodie.
yeah, there'd be some. It'd be like, was it the Mister? What's it? The Curious Case of Mister
Benjamin
Button or
Button.
something? Benjamin
Ben,
Button. Yeah, yeah.
the guy ages backwards.
You're aging backwards.
Yeah.
All right. So I see we got people jumping on. Handful. Welcome. Like every Q&A Wednesday, this is all about you guys. So feel free to ask questions. We're here to talk about credit scores, how things work, how the bureaus work. The only thing that we really don't talk about is specific credit repair techniques. But as far as learning all the essentials, everything that you need to know to be in the know with credit, that's what we're here to talk about. So, John, I thought we would start with I'm on the phones again this week because my guy that covers the phones, we have one customer service rep for the 30,000 or so active clients that we've got. So he's taking a break. I'm covering the phone, so I've got a little bit more hands-on of what people are asking. So why don't we take a minute and talk a little bit about score migration? Because I think one of the things that, especially for people who are on the mend, they're trying to repair their credit or rebuild their credit. Any kind of fluctuation in score it's like, what happened? My score dropped 9 points. Like, we'll get that email. Like, what happened? My score dropped 9 points. What's the cause of it? Um, of course, then sometimes it'll drop 20 points, and sometimes. So maybe you can explain an acceptable range of score migration, what score migration is, what causes it, and then as we're talking about it, for anybody who wants to jump in and ask a question, that's what we're here for.
So, um, score migration is the kind of natural organic ebb and flow of your credit scores over time. So, as you and hopefully our viewers know, your credit score is not chiseled in stone. It is also not something that is a constant on a credit report, meaning that you don't have this three-digit number kind of in the top right-hand corner of your credit report that is constantly going up or down based on changes in your credit report. However, every time your score is calculated, let's say it was calculated at the same time every single month for 24 months, then your score would go up and down month over month based on the natural changes in your credit report. Now, some of the people watching may be thinking, well, my credit report, I don't do anything. I don't use credit. I have the same balance on my credit cards every month, or I pay them off, or whatever your position or your scenario happens to be. Um, Keep in mind, however, that every single month, everything on your credit report gets 1 month older. So even though you may not be actively buying something or accelerating the payoff of something, your credit report does actually change over time, even though you're not actively doing anything. If you have inquiries, they're getting older. All of the trade or the accounts on your credit report are getting older. If you unfortunately have a bankruptcy or collections, those are also getting older. And so, because of just the normal changes in a consumer's credit report, balances, new accounts being removed, um, everything getting older, your credit scores are going to move. And so that's generally referred to as score migration. And a normal score migration is going to fluctuate within plus or minus 25 points month over month. And so for you folks who, and I get it, like I'm not being critical of your reaction to your score going down 8 points, but you have to understand that that's normal. It's not unusual. It doesn't mean that your credit repair journey has been derailed. It just means that your credit reports have changed and your score is 8 points lower than the last time it was calculated. And next month, when it's calculated again, it may go up 4 points. And so that's just the natural movement in your score. When you see a change in scores, you know, um, 75 points lower or 75 points higher, that's not natural score migration. That is some sort of event based score difference. So, a new derogatory hitting your credit report, maxing out a credit card, something being deleted from a credit report that was otherwise problematic. That's when you're going to start seeing changes in scores that are much more pronounced. And David, for you when you're doing customer service, or when your customer service person is actually doing customer service, it's a whole lot easier to explain that difference in score than it is to explain, hey, my score went down 2 points last month. What happened is at Armageddon. What should I do?
Yeah, normally when we have that conversation, if somebody calls in, they're maybe a little frantic. And they're like, "My gosh, my score changed." I'm like, "Okay, let's pin this down a little bit. What do you consider change?" And that's when it can be that 5 points, 10 points. Nothing that's like you said, not to be critical of of that kind of a change, but certainly it's no cause to be an alarmist.
Yeah,
What
I can tell you that back in my FICO days, when we would have conversations with, because I used to travel a lot when I was at FICO, and I would do presentations at different mortgage and other types of events. Um, that, and FICO had their own events. Back then it was called Interact. I think now it's called FICO World. But we would have thousands of people at these things, and I was one of the credit score experts on behalf of the company, and inevitably I'd end up with a conversation with somebody at some of these events where that was the discussion. Why did my score go down 4 points? And
yeah,
having that discussion with someone who doesn't understand credit scoring is a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because I think the equation, or the natural equation, is my weight. I gained 4 pounds, or I lost 4 pounds. That's pretty easy to explain, right? I've been eating a lot of pizza lately. I've been running a whole lot lately. So it's a little bit easier to explain than it is to someone who doesn't understand scoring. Now, if you have this conversation with someone who does understand scoring, number one, usually the conversation doesn't even happen, because they're like, yeah, I get it. Scores change over time. Or number two, it usually ends pretty quickly when you bring up the topic of score migration.
For those who are watching, if somebody can just post a quick comment or a question, I'm getting a reading that there's an error with the part of the software that brings in comments. So we might not be able to see your comments today, unfortunately. That's a new little error for me. So I'm just going to pull up YouTube and Facebook, John, and if people post questions, I should be able to just see it. Oh, no, we're good. Seems like we're good. And thank you so much. All right, false alarm. Really good. So, John, there we go. All right, we're good. Hey, Indy. Greetings from Tampa. All right. Oh, John. I saw
Happy
your
to help.
comment last time when I was on live. All right, very cool. All right, so the warning I got was not a legitimate warning. That's good news. So, John, as far as like extreme score migration, let's put aside anything new being added on, and we'll cover older accounts in a second. But what kind of movement can somebody see? Like, let's say they've got that $300 secured card, and it's brand new, and it's the only credit card they've got, and they go out to dinner with the spouse, and they put $298 including tip, on the card.
Nice.
What kind of what kind of if any what kind of reaction do you think the scoring model might have to a single revolving account being effectively reaching its maximum in a short in a short period of time like that?
Yeah, and so assuming that we're just talking about the metric that considers utilization, obviously you don't want your credit cards maxed out, and I would suggest that's irresponsible usage of a secured credit card to immediately go out. If you were going to pay $298 for dinner, then you shouldn't have given a $300 deposit to your bank and opened a secured credit card. You should have shoved it into a checking account and put it on your debit card, because then now you're in $298 of debt essentially twice over, because you've given the bank 300 of it already, and now you've spent 298, so you've got to pay that back. So
Right.
That's not very smart. It's not very smart money management. But no, look, it's not a secret that utilization is problematic. That's a pretty minor. I would say that example is pretty minor because of the dollar amount. Scoring models do in fact consider the amount of revolving debt that you're in, and someone who has nothing other than a really small limit secured card, it isn't going to be able to get into a lot of revolving debt. They may be able to max out what they have pretty easily, but they're not going to end up with $50,000 of credit card debt. So the impact of something like that is going to be relatively minor in as much as the dollar amount of the debt is very, very low.
Well, what about and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things I think I've seen many, many times is that person who gets that secured card, they're in the low sixes, for example. They're rebuilding. They've got some other derogatory. It's the only card they've got. Now they're virtually maxed out, and we see a 40 point drop as soon as that maxed out card or that creditor reports that information to the bureau.
Yeah.
And now we had initially a brand new card, zero balance. Now it's 95% utilized, and now we have a 40 point drop in score.
That's right.
Not too uncommon. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think the association to real debt is so much not the concern with people who are trying to rebuild, because they can't get into a lot of debt. They've got the secured credit card. They've got maybe an authorized user account that they can't really charge anything on. So that's not so much the worry. It's like, oh, I didn't realize if I maxed out my card that I was going to lose 30, 40 points or whatever the case may be. Can you talk a little bit about, this is something that I learned from you maybe a couple of years ago that interestingly enough, it's not something that I knew before. So I'm in the business for 7-8 years before I knew this. Can you talk a little bit about nuisance balances?
Yeah, we're about to start. You're about to start reading a lot of.
We're going to be in that time of the year.
That's right. You're about to start reading a lot of articles about nuisance balances, because we're getting to that time of the year where people think that they have to use their Gap card at the Gap, or their Macy's card at Macy's, or their Costco card at Costco. They don't realize they can use their Amex card everywhere.
Is the Gap even around anymore? I feel like you and I.
You can see how long I've been answering this question. If I'm starting to, so your Kids R Us retail card and your Bed Bath and Beyond. These are like stores that don't even exist anymore.
Your Miller's Outpost. Did you guys have Miller's Outpost on your side of the country?
I don't know. I mean, we could make an entire episode about old presenters not getting in the now, or like we're talking about how you're charging things at restaurants that don't even exist any longer, and buying things at outlets that don't even exist any longer. So when I bought my airline ticket on Pan Am, I was going to connect through JFK on Braniff. And then when I bought those two tickets, I was going to max out my credit cards. If someone's watching, is be like, those airlines don't even exist any longer. What are these two guys even talking about? So what a nuisance balance is it's kind of a pejorative term, and really what it is it's it's these small balances that you see pepper consumers' credit reports over the holiday shopping period. So really, what's about to start happening is next week Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I kind of okay.
Yeah, we
So
got Black
what's
Friday coming up.
that's right. So it's generally going to happen, the week of Thanksgiving, going all the way through, Cyber Monday and all the Christmas and Hanukkah shopping season, and all the way through into the new year, where you have people are going to generally spend more on credit cards in the next 5 weeks than they've done in the prior, 11 and a half months on their cards, and they're gonna be doing so buying things that they normally wouldn't buy, which is going to be gifts for their family and friends, or things for themselves. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of retail store cards opened over the next 6 weeks or 5 weeks because of the aggressiveness of the retail stores to offer discounts in exchange for people opening new cards. And then they're going to, people are going to use those cards, and retail store credit cards. Look, I have nothing against retail store credit cards. However, everything before the word however doesn't count. But however, if I were to tell you to close your eyes and I told you that I was going to give you a $500 credit limit at 27%, you'd think I'm talking about a subprime credit card. And what I'm really talking about is a retail store credit card, because they all have notoriously low credit limits and they all have relatively high interest rates, even when you compare them against, your garden variety Visa or your garden variety MasterCard or Discover, where the average interest rate on those is between 16 and 17%, where retail store cards are almost always well into the 20s. And people, they're okay with it. They generally accept it. And to the extent that they carry balances on those retail store cards, it makes whatever you bought that much more expensive, because now you're servicing the debt at 20 to 30%, your 20 to 30% interest rate on your money. So what you end up in January, when everyone's watching and we do one of these lives in the new year, David, I would hope that people watching are they're gonna say, no, I was able to avoid the temptation. I didn't open any new retail cards. I did not use my credit report as a 20% off coupon at any particular retailer. But there are going to be plenty of people who are going to say, look, I have new accounts. I have balances on accounts that I rarely use, and my credit scores went down because now I have new debt, and now I have a bunch of new accounts with balances where before I didn't have those accounts. And those are all metrics that credit scoring models consider. So just, again, adults get to make adult decisions. I'm not here to judge. I'm just telling you that that's what's going to happen, and then at least you're now well informed.
Yeah, it happens every year, and right in January, we this space that we're in, me in particular, is very seasonal. It's very slow right now. Nobody's really thinking about their credit so much, apart from how much they're going to be, exercising those credit cards. And then in January, it's like, okay, now it's time to sort of settle this stuff or figure out what we're going to be doing. And that's one of the things that we see very, very frequently is that call or that email or that message like, hey, my scores just dropped 50 points. I'm not, what happened? What did you, sometimes it's like, what did you guys do? I'm like, what did you do? And then we look at the credit report, and that's one that is really common is, it's not the new credit card so much, John, that we see, although that happens, because frankly, a lot of people who are using Credit Versio don't really have the ability to go out and go to the Kohl's or the Nordstrom or whatever and get through either Synchrony or Barclays or whoever, get a brand new card. But what they do is the cards that they've had for years that they paid off, they reactivate those. So that's what we see quite a bit. One of the biggest culprits, like, I don't know, John, if you had a guess, like, which store card do you think is the most prominent store card on credit reports? And this is hundreds of thousands of credit reports that we have in our system, and we noticed this one day, and we're like,
I would say that it was something issued by Synchrony Bank, and it is probably a Victoria's Secret.
Yes, you got it. You got it. I was really surprised at that. I forgot what the percentage was when development was going, hey, by the way, interesting little tidbit, guys. You have X percentage. It was high. It was like, I want to say it was like 20% of our customers had a Victoria's Secret card. It was
Nice.
crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, but that's what we're going to see coming in is a lot of people who are, and I get it too. I've probably done that back in the day where you spread it across a bunch of cards, and then you know, and John, maybe you can spend a minute just talking about why FICO and why Vantage Score sees that as higher risk, and why it is punitive to have balances across a lot of different cards.
Yeah, so this also goes hand in hand with that whole issue of the strategy of spreading balances across credit cards versus having a larger balance on a limited number of cards. And one of the theories is as well, I don't have any one card that's heavily utilized
Yeah.
because I spread my balances out. So now my cards all have low utilization, which is that's true. I mean, that's math. But what you've also done is you've also now increased the number of accounts with balances. And so you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in some respect. Is you may be helping one metric, but you're also hurting another metric at the same time. And so that's what happens with respect to all these nuisance balances. It's kind of the same thing. Instead of having all of your holiday purchases on your Amex or all of your holiday purchases on your Discover or on your Visa or MasterCard, you're spreading them out over multiple credit cards, including stuff that you're reactivating because you never ever use it, or stuff that you're opening new because you fell for the 20% off discount for your shopping if you would agree to open a new card. So even though if you're going to spend $5,000, you still spent $5,000, but now you've spent $5,000 and you spread those balances all across multiple cards. Your utilization is the same. It didn't go up and it didn't go down, but you've also now increased the number of accounts with balances. And that is a metric that people never ever talk about
Yeah.
in both FICOs and Vantage scores, credit scoring systems. And that's one of the reasons why your scores can go down, even though you have not increased the aggregate amount of debt on your credit report.
If John, I mean, since you spent so many years at FICO, what is the thinking behind that? Because one might argue, well, what does it matter if I'm going to be servicing this debt? Let's just, if it's $10,000 on my Citi card, how is that different from having $10,000 spread across? Why would it matter if I just had $2,000 on 5 credit cards?
Well, number one, the likelihood that you're paying the same amount to service that debt across all those cards is highly, highly unlikely. The likelihood
Oh,
of you
gotcha.
having the same APR across all of your credit cards is very, very low. So from a from a saving or from a cost savings perspective, you'd like to have all of your balances on whatever credit card has the lowest APR, and optimally, you'd like to pay it in full every month so your APR becomes irrelevant. So, that's kind of the budgeting answer to your question. From the scoring answer to your question, the answer to that is because in FICO's research, the research indicates that consumers who have more accounts with balances are more likely to pay late and default. That's why their scores aren't as high, because they're a higher risk consumer. That's actually the answer to every question about why did my score go down, because what you did indicates that you're a higher risk and therefore the score is penalizing you accordingly. So, yes, you're in the same amount of debt. Yes, your utilization ratios are the same, but you have more accounts of balances, and that's not as good as having fewer accounts of balances.
Yeah. Sandra's got a question. Thanks for posting here. Let's bring it up on the screen so we all can see it. Let me move it around just a little bit here. I've been denied a loan based on no mortgage loan in FICO 658. We paid off our mortgage 3 years ago. Is there something I can write for the credit bureaus to recognize this? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you paid off your mortgage 3 years ago. which means that you, unless for some reason, number one, your mortgage was never on your credit report, or two, somebody argued with the credit bureaus and was successful in getting it removed, that mortgage, most mortgages are on credit reports, right? Usually the mortgage lender or the servicer furnishes mortgage loans to all three credit bureaus. And if you pay it off and it's in good standing, then the credit bureaus, as a matter of policy, will maintain that on your credit report for the next 10 years. I mean, that's a pretty well known policy of the credit bureaus. If it's derogatory, they have to remove it after 7 years, obviously. But if it's in good standing, they'll maintain it for 10 years after it becomes inactive. So, to the extent that you had a mortgage and it's not on your credit report for whatever reason, then you're right. You're not getting credit for it. You're not getting credit for it on your credit report, and your score is not rewarding you for it. Unfortunately, um, having something added. This is an interesting dilemma, David. What I'm about to
Well,
say is
my thought, John, is it sounds like it's a private money loan, like a hard money loan.
possibly what I'm about to say is a little counterintuitive. Believe it or not, it's actually harder to get something added to your credit report than it is to get something deleted from your credit report. So it's next to impossible to force. First off, the credit bureau can't just add it to your credit report because they're not the mortgage lender, right? Your mortgage lender can add it to your credit report because they're the furnisher of that information, and they have to be able to verify it if you ever challenge it. So it's not that the credit bureaus um, they can't just sit there and kind of key type in your mortgage loan on your credit report. That would never happen. But certainly, whoever serviced your mortgage loan, if they for some reason chose to never furnish it, but they have the ability to do so, meaning that they have accounts with the credit bureaus. I mean, you can ask them. I don't want to give you false hope. I can tell you that I've been around this block a long time, and that's a very, very long shot. I'd love to hear, if you don't mind, Sandra, kind of answering your question as to, who did you have the loan with? Well, Chase. I mean, Chase obviously does furnish to all three of the credit bureaus. I'd be curious to know why, when you paid it off 3 years ago, why did it disappear? Normally, that stuff stays around, and yeah, if you opened it in 1995, um, then it's a 28-year-old trade line, which is a fantastic thing to have on your credit reports. And so removing it obviously will lower your average age of your accounts. And that can absolutely lead to a lower score. It's one of the kind of tertiary metrics and scoring systems that people don't think about a lot, is that average age. And it also probably, I may be wrong on this, but there's a possibility it may have been your oldest trade. And so that's another metric, is how old is your oldest trade and what is the average age of your trade. So obviously you never want to lose something like that from your credit report. So it's kind of a mystery to me why Chase would delete something from a credit report, 3 years after it had been paid off, if they did it at all, or if it was the credit bureaus that chose to delete it after 3 years, because that would be counter to their policy. Their policy is 10 years after something becomes inactive.
Yeah, Sandra, I've never seen that before. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck. I hope you're. I
Yeah.
hope. But look. So let's talk about the elephant in the room a little bit, David. And Sandra, you shouldn't take this personally because I don't know you, and I'm sure you're a wonderful person. 658 is about 58 points below the national average. So your score isn't 658 because the Chase account was removed from your credit report. There's something else that's causing you to have a 658. So um, while yeah, that stinks that old good account is gone. There's clearly something else that's on your credit reports that's causing you to have a score in the mid 600s. You'd really optimally like to be about 100 points higher than that, and then you're kind of golden. So whatever those other things are, those are the things that I think I would be focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Sandra, if maybe there's some derogatory stuff from the recent past that's on there. I mean, like John said, 658 is not really an optimal place to be, and not typical of what I see in a score when somebody's got a mortgage or paid off a mortgage recently. So there's definitely another part of the story there. Um, Not really too much of a credit repair question, I think. John, what do you think about this? My account came back verified on TransUnion, but deleted on Equifax. How would it work to delete off TransUnion? So, Trev, the only way I can answer that question is the bureaus are completely separate entities, meaning they have their own protocols for I mean, all in accordance with the law, but they have their own ways of doing investigations and responding. So just because it comes off of one and not the other, that's not unusual at all. There isn't any special, gotcha technique. You can just dispute it if you see something on there that's not right. But that's what you're experiencing is not uncommon. Let's see. Draken, what does this say? Is there a such thing as comparable mortgage credit, as well as comparable credit card or car credit? Excuse me. I've heard they base new auto loans based on old paid off auto loans, and they're able to. Let me put that back up again. It's kind of a big question. Able to see those on FICO even after it was paid in full, just like Sandra, for instance.
Yeah. So, in the not in the mortgage industry, but in the auto industry, definitely yes. So the credit scores that are used in the mortgage industry are, the credit scores that are used in the auto industry and the credit card industry are industry specific FICO scores. So for auto, it's the FICO auto score. And the FICO auto score, it's not going to be solely based off of older auto loans or the performance of other auto loans, but it is heavily weighted based on the performance of prior auto experience. And the same thing can be said for the credit card version of the FICO score. So, absolutely yes. As long as it's on the credit report, then this FICO auto score is going to see it and it's going to consider it and it's going to weigh it heavily, because auto lenders are more interested about how you're going to pay your auto loans, not how you're going to pay other loans. And so those models are built to more heavily weigh auto performance. As far as like for Sandra's scenario where it's now gone off the credit report, no credit scoring model can see something that's not on a credit report. They don't have, x-ray vision or the ability to see what was on your credit report at some time in the past. They can only see what's on your credit report today. Now, as David, as we all know, there's always a but, or it depends. It depends also on where you're applying. And if you're applying for auto credit, so let's use Wells Fargo as the example, so you can put a kind of face to the name. Let's say that you're going to Wells Fargo and you say, hey, look, I want to borrow some money to buy a car. Can I fill out an application? And you're going to fill out an application with Wells Fargo. And one of the things that they're going to do, as well as pretty much every other mainstream reputable lender in this country, is they're going to check your credit. And if you have a pre-existing relationship with them, they're going to see how you did or how you are doing with that pre-existing relationship. So in those scenarios, even if it's not on your credit report any longer, they're going to know, hey, this guy did have an auto loan with us previously, and this is how he performed with it. Or this guy had multiple auto loans with us previously, and this is how he performed on those loans. And so in that scenario, your prior performance with the same lender is going to be considered and either held against you, or you're going to be rewarded for it. And this is outside of whatever your credit report and whatever your credit score looks like. This is essentially what's referred to as master file data. So you're in their master file, and so they're going to consider how you perform. Now, if you had auto credit with a different lender like Chase or Bank of America, then obviously Wells Fargo isn't going to be able to see how you performed on that other than looking at your credit report. If it's not on your credit report, then they can't consider it one way or the other.
Perfect. Sandra is just adding, prior to being paid off, the loan was 7. It was a score of 716.
And that is the national average credit score, 716. So this look, not knowing anything else about Sandra's scenario, if nothing else, underscores the importance of the age of your credit report. Sandra's scenario should, because assuming that everything that she's saying is an accurate representation of what's on her credit report, and I have no reason to think that Sandra doesn't know how to read her own credit report, and she sounds like she absolutely does, and she's plugged into this thing. What happened is it probably considerably lowered the average age of her accounts, and it also may have been the oldest account on her credit report. So her credit report just became considerably younger because of the deletion of that item. And so by doing nothing wrong, right, by getting out of mortgage debt, her scores went down because of the kind of collateral impact of losing a really, really old account off a credit report. And this is one of the, when I am critical of the credit repair industry, this is one of the things that I'm critical about, which is kind of the haphazard nuclear approach to getting things deleted off credit reports without considering that some of the stuff may be really, really old. And even though it may have some derogatories on it, the fact that it's ancient is really, really helpful. And by getting it removed, you're actually going to probably cause your credit score to go down rather than cause your credit score to go up. So this is one of those, my dad is really bad about this. He thinks that just because something's paid off, that it should never be on your credit report. And so he'll argue to have stuff removed from his credit report, even though it's in good standing. And I keep telling him, Dad, you gotta let this go. It's old, it's in good standing, it's helpful. And he just thinks, no, it should be gone. It's over with. No, I don't have this account. I know. So I throw up my hands and I'm like, whatever. You do what you're going to do.
Yeah. Next question, JT. It's kind of a two-parter, John. I think the first part is pretty okay for you if you want me. I can take the second part because it's somewhat, trespasses in the area of credit repair. Can charge-off accounts report a past due balance? Is that accurate reporting? Why don't you take care of that one, John, and I'll follow up with the second half.
Of course it is. One of the myths in the world of consumer credit is when something is charged off, and if you get a 1099-C, that you somehow don't owe that money any longer. Completely incorrect. You absolutely can have a charge off with a balance. A charge off is an accounting designation. It doesn't mean that you don't owe it. It just means that it's been written off as a loss by the lender. You still owe it. So certainly, yes, you can absolutely have a charged off account with a balance. And if, is it accurate reporting? Well, I don't know. Is the balance really what was charged off? That's going to be the answer to the yes or no as far as is it accurate.
Yeah. Let's see. Also, what to do when the furnisher of said account says that it's accurate but never entered notice of dispute. Remember, John, this used to be like, bureaus, not bureaus, I'm sorry. But lawyers used to sue on this for a while ago. I think it.
They still do. They still
do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Constant.
So JT, every time I hear that question, I approach it as somebody who thought this was going to be like a gotcha. I got the bureau. They didn't report it as in dispute, and yeah, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but it's not really going to affect anything as far as the dispute process goes. Maybe it's possible you got a report where that area isn't clearly visible. I've seen a couple of reports like that. I think Smart Credit's pretty good at showing accounts in dispute, but I don't think you have a leg to stand on saying, "Hey, I disputed this. You guys said it was accurate, but you never entered in a notice of dispute." It's not a strategy. It's not something that's going to.
So there's two thresholds, or there's two. It depends on if you're talking about the Fair Credit Reporting Act or the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If you're talking about FDCPA, the FDCPA makes it pretty clear that if a debt collector, a third-party debt collector, gets a dispute of an account, whether it's from the consumer directly or through the credit bureau, they have to mark it as being in dispute. And I can tell you, a lot of them are my clients, and they all do it. And I've got the receipts to prove it. Now, if it's an FCRA type of scenario where it's just a bank or a credit union or a credit card issuer, it's not a third-party debt collector, The industry guidance is to not mark it as being in dispute when they get a dispute funneled in through a credit reporting agency. So the industry guidance actually for the last 6 years, since 2017, has instructed 14,000 some odd furnishers of information to not mark it as being in dispute. So did they still get sued for that? They don't get sued for that, but if they get sued, that gets thrown in a lot, kind of as a, an add-on to whatever the various alleged violations are. Oh, by the way, and you also didn't mark this as being in dispute. Um, I've got a lot of when I do my expert work, and I don't want to get too deep into that because a lot of times these videos are, I got some lawyer trying to use these videos against me in a deposition. But that is definitely a common provision or component of these complaints is, oh, you did all these things wrong. Oh, yeah, you also didn't mark it as being in dispute. But I've never seen one where that was the only alleged violation.
Interesting. Yeah. No, John, I did not know that part. I thought that the notice of dispute had to be entered. So original credit, those just under FDCPA is where it's required, and this is new in the credit reporting resource guide.
Yeah. So for indirect disputes, which are those that are circumvented through the bureau, so they go through eOscar and there's an ACDV, right? There's always been an argument that he who received the dispute is obligated to show it as being in dispute. And if you get an ACDV, then the dispute was received by the credit bureaus, not by the furnishing party, right?
Interesting.
That's FCRA. For FDCPA, that's a different animal. FDCPA makes it pretty clear you got to mark it in dispute, which is why debt collectors are pretty diligent about just in dispute, in dispute, in dispute, in dispute. And because that can be a standalone FDCPA. I've seen those, right, where you have a complaint filed under the FDCPA, and really the only thing that they're alleging that the debt collector did wrong was they didn't mark it as being in dispute. I'm not going to name the lawyer, but there's an attorney right now who, and I like to, whenever I see kind of like consistent themes of lawsuits, I actually give them names. And so this one I call the hokey pokey. And the hokey, for those of you who remember the hokey pokey, the little child dance that you did, you put your left foot in, you put your left foot out, you put your left foot in, and you shake it all about. I call this the hokey pokey theory of lawsuits, where you have a consumer who files a dispute with a debt collector, then a week later calls the debt collector and says, no, I don't dispute this any longer. And then a week later they say, oh, wait, now I am disputing. So it's like they're hokey pokeying whether or not they're disputing, and they're trying to catch the debt collector in between, adding and removing those in dispute notations. And then boom, if they catch them in between the removal, then they think they've got a violation, and boom, all of a sudden you have a lawsuit. It's what I call scum law, but some lawyers like to practice that.
Yeah. Okay, so we got 4 questions. I think we're going to end with these. Matt's got kind of a complex question. Let me just throw this up here real quick. The credit card, what is this? A CC creditor charges off an account and reports it closed to the CRAs. Can they reopen it, change all the data, and reclose it 2.5 years later? Hold on a second here. New close date is more harmful than older one.
So the close date doesn't have, your credit score is not influenced by the date that the item was closed. So it may be harmful in the eyes of the lender in their policies, but the close date is irrelevant to your credit score. It doesn't make your score go up or down. The charging off of an account, normally when an account is charged off, that's it, because it's in default. However, it doesn't mean that the creditor can't kind of reallocate it in their accounting ledger and make it no longer a charged off account, make it now a performing asset, and then reopen it and then close it later on. Sure, I suppose they can do that. I'm not There may be, if there's a law that prevents a credit card issuer from doing that, then I'm not aware of that. That's nothing in the Fair Credit Reporting Act addresses that issue, and that's kind of where my expertise is. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that unless there's some sort of a rule that prevents them from doing, like maybe even accounting, because when after Enron, the accounting rules changed dramatically. So if you categorize something as a write-off on your ledger, I don't know if post Enron accounting practices prevent that from being backed out. I'm not an accountant, so I can't answer that with any degree of accuracy, other than just what I said with respect to Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Second half here. These are obvious truth in lending violations because it was all done without any communication with the debtor and or his attorney. Is this something the CRAs will respond to if disputed? I don't know if it's obviously a truth in lending act violation, but then again, I'm not an attorney.
So full disclosure, I'm also not a TILA expert, and I've never represented myself as even though I own most of the TILA related domains. I don't market myself as being a TILA or Truth in Lending Act expert.
Yeah, that sounds like you're gonna have to get somebody, Matt. I mean, I apologize. We're just neither John or myself are experts in that area, and you probably gonna have to find somebody who, understands TILA a lot better than we do, which is not much. Okay, Dre again. Does an FTC report hurt your credit profile? How long does it take to recover from identity theft as far as your credit profile? Oh, I see. Your FTC report is identity theft. Okay.
So I assume you're talking about the FTC fraud affidavit or the identity theft report that you can file from the FTC website. So no, I mean, obviously, so the fact that you have filed an FTC report isn't on your credit report. So it can't help or hurt your credit report one way or the other because it's not on your credit report. I'll be real honest with you. The value of any of those reports, including police reports, FTC fraud affidavits, CFPB complaints, have been greatly diluted. And they have been greatly diluted because of companies that have nothing to do with David's company and Credit Versio, but market credit sweeps and other really nasty illegal methods of trying to clean up your credit report, including filing knowingly false police reports, knowingly false FTC fraud affidavits, knowingly false CFPB complaints, just so you can represent that someone who's been the victim of identity theft to try to get stuff swept off their credit reports. And so I've got to tell you, I've seen a lot of those types of scenarios. And so for me, and I can only speak for me, the weight that I give those reports because of how often they've been abused is very, very low. And it's not just anecdotal. The FTC has sued companies for filing false police reports on behalf of customers. The CFPB has a letter, an actual canned letter that they will send to consumers if they think that they've gotten an inauthentic complaint about something on the credit report. And I'm going to paraphrase, but the letter reads something to the effect of, hey, we got a complaint. We don't think it's you. If you really have a complaint, blah, 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 blah. And basically what they're saying is, we don't think you sent us this complaint. We think it came from somebody else. So the fact that the CFPB has a canned letter that they fire off in response to stuff like that, and the FTC has now sued companies, should give you an idea as to the unfortunate current status of those types of reports.
All right, John, I know we're losing you now. You got to jump off here. So yeah. I promised we'd finish up on time, but there's a handful of questions that are still left. I'll stay on and answer those. John, thank you so much for joining me again today. Great information, great answers to the questions. I always learn something, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Thank you, David. Right. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone who's watching. Y'all have a good one.
All right. So it's just us now. Okay. So let me go back up and see where we were. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Hakeem, great question. Once your account gets into collection, is it worth paying off in full or fight to have it removed from your credit report? So I've got two answers to this. The first is my default position as somebody that's in the, I've seen tens of thousands of credit reports in the last 11 years. I've had 25, maybe, I don't know, maybe 25,000 conversations with people as a consultant when I used to do full service credit repair. And I've seen people have collections on their accounts that on their credit reports that were legitimately not theirs, or the balance was wrong, or there was something about it that wasn't accurate. So my default position is this: it's two positions. One, dispute it first. Just make sure, even if you look at it like, yeah, this looks right, yeah, this is the original creditor, seems to be about the balance I owe. The reason why you want to dispute it a couple of rounds first is to make sure that company has a legal right to collect. Okay, because now even though it might be a legit debt from the original creditor, you want to make sure you're paying the legit people. So you don't get somebody else 2 months down the road, 6 months down the road that's saying, no, you owe us the money for this debt. So I would dispute it. Now, having said that, let's say you dispute it, comes back, they have all the documentation they need. All they need to do is just send you a document saying, yeah, we own this debt now. My answer is settle it. And there's a lot of reasons to settle it. One is contemporary credit scoring models like FICO 8, 9, 10, 10T. So 10T is going to be used for mortgage here in about 18 months. Vantage Score 3, 3.0, 4.0. 4.0 is also going to be used in mortgage here coming up in about 18 months. So now, whether you have the intention to buy a home or not in the next 18 months or beyond, okay, that might not be relevant to you, but paid collections are categorically ignored. So even though you can see them cosmetically on a credit report, when they are paid, they are ignored by the scoring models. That's a big plus. Also, there's just something about paying a debt that's yours. I went through the credit repair process. That's how I got here. And some debts I settled. I had to settle them. I didn't have to. I could have just waited for them to drop off, but I settled them. It was a good thing to do because you don't want them chasing you. You don't want that adversarial relationship. God forbid they sue you. So yeah, my position is dispute it first. If it survives, then settle it, and don't settle it off in installments. Just call them up. Maybe you owe $1,000 and just say, listen, I got $350. Will you take $350? Try doing that. Okay. Let's see. Lewis, do late payments get removed from your credit report after 7 years? Actually, a little bit of good news for you, Lewis. The bureaus tend to remove things not at the 7-year mark, but at the 6-year, 9-month mark. So that 30-day late, that first 30-day late, 6 years, 9 months is when that thing will come off. Trey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see. JT, so when it comes to the charge-off error suggestion with Credit Versio, that was my reason for asking it, if it was accurate to report a balance past due. So JT, that's a great question. And when Credit Versio does not see an error on a charge-off, yes, John's right. It is an accounting designation, a charge-off, and even if you have a balance, which is 100% legal. If Credit Versio doesn't see an error, sometimes you can get things removed by just opening an investigation. So there's 4 reasons why things fall off of credit reports. This is right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's erroneous, outdated, incomplete, or unverifiable. You can almost eliminate the middle two. Outdated and incomplete is not really something that we see very often anymore now that Metro 2 is the language used by data furnishers and bureaus. And that's been in effect since 2017, I think. So you don't see a lot of that anymore. So it's really the two. Is it wrong or is it unverifiable? Now, the burden of proof and the burden of performance is on the data furnisher and to a degree the bureau. So when you dispute these accounts, they might just not be able to verify it. And that's how things get deleted. We see charge-offs get deleted all the time, not because there's a balance, but because they don't have the ability to verify the information and they give an instructive order to the bureaus to remove it. That's what you're seeing in Credit Versio. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends if the creditor can verify the information or if it's accurate or not. Okay. Yeah, Akeem, that's a real cool, little bonus. Something to put in your back pocket. Okay. Uh, all right, you are very welcome. Let's see. Okay, wow, we're caught up. That's it. And yeah, we've got maybe about a dozen people watching still. Let's see people dropping off. Um, yeah, JT, you're welcome. Here's a mindset to take with you when you're going in the repair process. Is I just gave this today. I'm working the phones today because my guy's on vacation, and we don't need a lot of customer service agents in here just because it's self serve. But I had this conversation today, and this is a conversation I've had probably a couple hundred times in my career over the last decade. So if you have derogatory credit, envision the act of recovering as walking up a mountain with a 100-pound pack. It doesn't matter what you want. You're going up that hill, and you're going up that hill with a 100-pound pack until these things drop off and you rebuild. So what is Credit Versio doing? What is credit repair doing? Credit repair is exercising the federal laws that have been put in place for you and for me to dispute the accounts, knowing that the burden of proof and performance is on the data furnisher, which is your creditor, and the bureaus. So everything has to be accurate. It has to be free from errors. It has to be complete. It has to be within the date that it's supposed to be in. And it has to be verifiable. And if it's not that, and the creditor can't fix it, then these are things that can drop off. So, well, what happens if 20 or 30% or 40% of the accounts that you're disputing drop off? So now you're going up that mountain, not with a 100-pound pack, but maybe a 60-pound pack. You're still going up that mountain, though. That's what the repair process is. So it'd be great to get everything deleted. I get it. I totally understand. I was that guy when I was a customer, like, what do we need to do to get this deleted? Is there anything else you can do? Is there anything else you can say? But the fact of the matter is I got like 40% of the things that were disputed on my credit report deleted, which meant I was left with 60. I rebuilt credit. I was smart with credit cards. I got good instruction. Same stuff I'm giving you guys in the credit coaching section in Credit Versio. That whole class was taught by me. And not me just as a guy with experience, but a guy with experience that also is a FICO cert. I'm a certified FICO instructor. That's what that thing is right there. So the point of the story is it takes a little bit of patience. It takes a little bit of time, and you're not going to get everything off you want. That's just the reality, but that's okay. I'd rather go up a mountain with a 60-pound pack than a 100-pound pack. Lewis, thank you. JT, you are welcome. All right. Hakeem, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Everybody, happy holidays. I will not be here next Wednesday. I will be out of town. So just consider next week a holiday week. And then the weekend after that, I will be back. And I'll be back with John again. So we can have more in-depth conversation about credit and scores and everything credit related. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. If you're watching this video on a replay, or just caught the tail end of it, feel free to post your questions. They stay up there on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll swing back around and answer them for you. Okay, happy holidays. Thank you very much, or happy Thanksgiving. We still have more holidays to come, and I'll see you in